Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show. Welcome to episode 1391. It's a lot of episodes. It's a lot of Srimad Bhagavatam. A lot of you guys out there have listened to every episode, and I find it quite impressive. Good morning, everybody. Got Miss Mara here spinning the dials.
Good morning. That means next week we're going to be at episode 1400.
Maybe we should do something special. What is it again? 1391?
Oh, the week after, huh? Or sometime next week. Yeah, because there's still a lot left to this
It's
week.
only Tuesday, yeah.
All right. That's great. We're still talking about the Thomas Essig's movie, Something Divine. A bunch of us are going to go see it next Wednesday in Arlington, Mass. If you're in the area, 5 o'clock at the Regent Theater. Come check it out. Something Divine. It's sort of like he started making a documentary about my life, and he was traveling on pilgrimage with me. Beautiful pilgrimage footage for probably a lot of people that you'll know if you go see it. And then it turned into a sort of like a film about a bunch of people's journey, also people you may know, and how like pilgrimage transforms people's life and people on their spiritual quest. Tom, congratulations on that. We're psyched to see it in Arlington, Virginia. Maybe put it up on the board, Thomas Essig.
Arlington, Massachusetts.
Arlington, Massachusetts. Don't go to
Everybody
Arlington,
went to the wrong
Virginia.
place.
We're not. He's like, no, stop, unmute me. It's Arlington, Massachusetts. Yeah. What else we got to say here? Anything else? Any other messages, Mayor?
Well, we have a Back to Recover group. The men meet at noon today. And also our next round of Sage Group. The Sage Group sign-ups start on Saturday, I believe. Is that right, Kaustubha?
Oh, I forgot the exact date, but it's coming up.
Yeah, I think it's on Saturday.
Highly encourage people to join the Sage Groups. It's a way to really strengthen community, relationships, definitely up your Krishna consciousness game just by having a group of, they become your good friends, don't they? Mara did it for many of them.
I've done maybe just 2 of them, I think. But yeah, they're incredible. You really get to know people. I just met up with a bunch of my sagelings like Miguel and Ann Watson in LA last weekend when we were there for Rath Yatra.
Yeah, you develop like friendship on a deep level, which is oftentimes you have friendships on like a superficial level, perhaps, or maybe a level that's just sort of like not in line with our values, especially as we start to really sort of like refine our values. So it's a good way to get together with people, and Kaustubha gives out a topic. Is that how it works? You give out a topic.
Yeah, usually every week I'll write out a theme for the discussion that'll be based on usually something from that came up in the show the previous week. Some weeks it's just kind of more like just conversation starters, just so that people get to know each other better. So we mix it up.
Wonder if anyone's developed a romance from a Sage Group.
Sage Group romance. I don't know.
That'd be interesting.
But anyway, well, I suppose we should be sharing more about that as the week goes. But you find that on our website. You go to wisdomofsages.com, and I think there's a Sage Group. Down the column on the left, you'll hit a Sage Group thing. You click that, then it shows like all the different groups and the different people that are hosting those groups. The fresh information will come out the day that we release it, I guess Saturday, and you can see what are the new groups that are there and who are the Sage Group leaders, and you can pick a time and a group that you want to join. And again, the sooner that you do it, the better, because those groups are limited to about like 8 people in a group, and there's hundreds of people getting into those groups. So,
alrighty. That's I think one of the best things we've done with this podcast is create those Sage Groups, and I'm going to take no credit for it because Kaustubha did it.
No, others have done. It's really Braj Bihari, Ishwari Sundari, Shri Rupa. Especially those 3 are really running it.
Hmm.
And then all of the sage group leaders, there's about 40 of them, and they all really, I hardly do anything now. I write up those sage group notes and that's about it.
Anyway, it's just your humility speaking, Prabhu.
Okay.
So we got a nugget for today. Here's our nuggets from Clarence Clemons. What do you know about Clarence Clemons?
What do you know about Clarence Clemons?
I know nothing about Clarence
You have
Clemons.
absolutely no idea who Clarence Clemons is?
Is he like a football player?
Mara, do you have any idea who Clarence Clemons is?
Nope.
Clarence
Are you name
Clemons
shaming
played
us?
saxophone for Bruce Springsteen.
Huh? Who did I just say? Oh, Mukunda Kishore. His father taught Bruce Springsteen judo.
Oh,
And-
Thomas Essig knew him personally.
Oh, Thomas
Clarence
Essig
Clemons.
knew him personally. Clarence Clemons. All right. Maybe he said this to Thomas Essig, this quote.
Maybe that's where Thomas Essig got into bhakti. It's because of Clarence Clemons.
The calm mind allows one to connect with the inner self, the soul, the very source of our being. That's where the music lives. That's where the music comes from. Very interesting, huh?
Yeah.
Artists trying to figure out, like, where is this music coming from? Where's this art coming from? The calm mind allows one to connect with the inner self, the soul, the very source of our being. That's where the music lives. That's where my music comes from. Well, I can comment on this, my friend, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead right now. You're going to break out the Shelter lyrics? Is that where we're
Now,
going?
this is completely not bona fide. Not that it's unbona fide. It's just my complete speculation.
Mara,
I
get
believe-
ready with that knitting needle. Just poke him if
It just-
it
No,
goes too far off.
I believe that
course.
artists, and there's a lot of artists on the show right now. Looking at Thorsten from Switzerland, he's an artist. And Tom Essig maybe is an artist, and Danny Kozakowski is an artist. But I believe that art and music, it's downloaded from higher beings. I feel, and then when you can get your mind in a place, of like he's saying there, almost like a stillness, the calm mind allows one to connect. You have to. I don't think it's necessarily coming from our soul, or else everybody would be musicians, and then I don't think you have to become this great musician to be an enlightened being. That's not a qualification of being an enlightened being. But I think it's almost as if other people, if not God, are like working through you or through your karma or something. But you need to get a still mind. Whenever I had to write music, and I've written like maybe 12 CDs, I would have to do it in a place where nothing bothered me. And I had to just either sit there, or one time I literally drove from New York to Miami just to finish a record. And I just wrote it in my mind, because when you drive, you can find a stillness in your mind. You know what I'm talking about? About that driving sort of like meditation?
I don't really do that, but people do talk about it.
Yeah, because you just drive down 95 South, and like a peace comes, and then you get flooded with information. I find, and it's almost like the songs are put together. I can't
Maybe it's
describe
just
it as if
something about the steadiness of that kind of road
yeah.
just flowing and
Yes, and I will say I'm going to really wholeheartedly believe in the calm mind allows one to connect with the inner self, whether it's an inner self or some other outer self being using your body.
so let's leave that part alone.
What? I'm not gonna
well, there's a
co-sign on this one unless I believe it.
No,
I'm
well,
just
you
saying.
don't believe. Well, let's work with our own shastra here.
Within our own tradition.
Yeah, that there's
All
a
I'm saying
God.
is
That
the
God is
tradition's
within the
very
heart
big
of every
as
living
humans.
being, right? Is that
All right.
that's a fact,
So it could
right?
be within this demigod that's going through my body, break down the walls, or you know what I mean?
All right.
It could be God, it could be a demigod, it could be a being, it could be a spirit. Whatever it is, there's something external happening if you could just get the mind out of the way.
Well, what he's saying is there's something internal happening, and then you have to calm the
And I'm
mind.
seeing it deeper. Yeah. You got to calm the mind. That's the first stage.
Great.
I'm sorry. I can't 100% co-sign with it, but I do agree with the first half.
I'm not asking you to co-sign with this, Raghunath.
Okay. I agree that calming the mind allows one to connect with something. What do you want to think? What do you think about this?
Well, my thought is that he's just sharing something here that, certainly a lot of people think about, but a lot of people don't even come to this stage of thinking about this. That if I would calm my mind, that I can come in touch with something within, whether you want to call that God within, or whether you want to call, he's saying it's the soul, right? That there's a me underneath all of this, that calmly I'm not even in touch with. Calmly my mind is just kind of running in its own loops or being distracted by external things. And so that essential kind of power, or the connection to something deeper, whether it's deeper artistic inspiration or deeper knowledge or deeper feelings, that I just run through life never coming into contact with that. I'm not going to get in contact with that until I calm my mind. And so, and again, people talk about that, but the deep, profound experience of that, it's not a cheap thing. It's something that requires effort. And therefore, like in the yoga tradition, these these qualities or practices that involve austerity, that involve renunciation, that involve it's that kind of thing, like I'm going to let go of certain things. I'm going to renounce certain things. I'm going to gain this focus or to gain this experience, in order for there to be deep contemplation or deep meditation or a feeling of connection to God within our heart, or a deep connection to feeling one's own self, as opposed to just experiencing the body and the mind. It's not a cheap thing. And so initially ideas like austerity or renunciation, that we get turned off by them. They don't appear as pleasurable, but they're offering something very profound. They're offering something something in life that we're all meant to experience that we too often don't.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. It's almost like we've created a world of busyness that it really breaks us from that. I was like thinking about like even like primitive living, where you're just like walking around, collecting wild strawberries, or basket weaving. All these things were just live in a primitive way, are meditative.
Yeah.
And we created like a busyness that gets us right in the mind, like we're living in in the mind, and therefore you're missing out on spirit and deeper connection, and we're living with anxiety that comes with that. So all these techniques you're mentioning, whether it's mantra meditation, music and kirtan, asanas, pranayam, it's all to calm the mind. All of these things are just to keep the mind calm, so we can get to this next phase, which is connection.
Mm.
Thank you, Clarence Clemons.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's interesting when people don't have a yoga background and they come to this conclusion, and maybe it comes through it through perhaps playing music. When you're a musician, you're playing scales every day. You're playing things on a regular basis, and some type of like steadiness that can maybe externally seem monotonous.
That calms the mind, right?
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Interesting that you brought a musician in for this. Did you know of Clarence Clemons? Like
Of
you were
course.
Clarence Clemons fans? Of
When I was a
course.
little kid, I was really into Springsteen.
I was trying to please you last night before I went to bed by watching a bunch of music videos of bands that you knew about. Me and Primera were
Well, I
appreciative.
know about so many.
Well,
If
me
you
and
really
Christopher
want to
were like,
please
how does
me,
this guy
Raghunath,
know so much about music?
if
Because you were into
really want-
punk music, that occupied part of your junior life.
yeah.
But you knew all the stuff about classic
I
rock.
just
So I was
listened
like,
to the radio.
I know. So back then, to know about like Led Zeppelin, to know about them, you'd have to
Yeah.
read a magazine. You got to get like Cream
I suppose I
magazine.
did that kind of stuff.
You read. Nowadays, you just Google who the hell was Led Zeppelin, search, and you like get the whole bio. You get like whatever happened to John Bottom, or stuff like that. It's a search away. But back then, you had to do like research. You had to find books or
Well,
literature, fan magazines. and you knew a lot about this stuff. I know nothing about it. I heard some songs on the radio, but you knew stuff. So I was like, you know what I'm going to do tonight before I go to bed, Mara? She's just like, go to bed. And I was like, no, I'm going to research music that Kostuba likes. And
So what did you
the
research?
first one was Kansas.
I never liked Kansas.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
As a matter of fact, on the show, I've talked about how much I didn't like Kansas.
Oh, they were very good, man. That guy could play the fiddle.
Okay.
Which brought me to The Devil Went Down to Georgia. He plays a mean fiddle
More
too.
music, which I didn't like.
I may have researched every music he didn't like. No, I looked at Pink Floyd. I listened to Pink Floyd.
I didn't like Pink Floyd when I was a kid, but I would if I would be listening to that music now. I mean, I have to admit that Pink Floyd
Yeah.
were quite unique, very
Yeah.
talented musicians.
And then I took it to Rush Live.
I wasn't into Rush either.
They were good.
Were you purposely
100?
trying to find the
Hair-
stuff I didn't listen to?
Haircut 100. I Googled them too.
All right.
All right. Maybe
don't think this had anything
maybe
to
I
do with
searched every
me.
band you didn't like. Maybe that's what I meant.
No,
I will
but
say,
but you know what you're saying is like you know when you're a kid you just learn stuff easy and you got that kind of open hard drive just to kind of start filling up. So I was into music when I was 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, big time, I was just listening to, so I remember all that stuff.
See, I missed it somehow. I don't know how you know all this. Parmananda too. He knows all this stuff.
It all sunk in that time. Like the Clarence Clemons, I could go note for note,
What?
as Clarence Clemons is solo to like certain songs and stuff. The Jungle Land, I could go just like the the whole.
Land.
It's just in there, That's why we got to be learning mantras at that age, You gotta
I
if you get
know.
trained up in
we
that
should be
stuff.
learning mantra, and you went coast
What's that?
note for note with Clarence Clemons on Jungle Land. You could have been learning like Vishnu Sahasranam.
Oh, I wish I was. I really wish I was.
Well, we might have
Maybe
to
next
take
life.
both again. The niche, yeah, or join the the Chandra Shloka group.
We should have a kids. We should have a kids shloka group.
How about an adult Shloka group?
Well, both.
We should have a kids one too.
Yeah. Train up the kids. They're the future, Raghunath.
Are they?
Yes, they are.
They are the future. Okay. That was called a double squirrel. All right, let's get into this. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tatojayam mudiriyat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, and to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshvabhadreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttamasloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. But regular attendance to classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotees. All that is troublesome to the heart will become eradicated, and loving service to the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Gyana Tamarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Midatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my teachers are opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my obeisances at their lotus feet. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 14, Text 38. I got a question for Mara here. I wonder if this is actually working. No, it's a serious question. Do you find that reading the Bhagavatam, when you've been reading it every day now for almost 5 years here, things that are troublesome to your heart are going away?
Yeah, I think things are less trouble. My heart.
That's not very. That's
How's
not
your
a
heart
good
doing?
sale pitch. Sort of, maybe. I think it's true for me.
Yeah, it's true for me.
Yesterday, you seemed like your heart was a little troubled.
Well, I'm not saying I have a perfect heart,
What was going on with your
but
heart?
you know what I did do even yesterday? If you
What?
missed the show yesterday, I was in a little bit of a bad mood, and these two were not helping the matter.
No, you just
But
snapped, though.
but I will say I could step outside of my mind and observe my mind being a child. And that was a good thing. It's not like you're just like you're on like a runaway train. You're like, oh, I'm on a runaway train, but someone else is driving this thing. So no, it didn't destroy everything troublesome to my heart necessarily, but it gave me at least a vantage point to like view it as not me. Sometimes you think I am the mind, and you're just like, "Yeah, everything's all falling apart. Everything's great. Everything's horrible. Everything's wonderful." That's sort of like a real roller coaster.
Hmm.
I had an ability to just view a roller coaster disaster happening.
Oh, by the way, we should mention that since we're talking about shloka groups, Nityananda Chandra is about to put together the next shloka group.
That
And
we recommend it.
exactly how and where we're going to present that or how that's going to work, we're going to try to, we got to talk about that in our meeting today, right?
Yeah, we're gonna meet me and Kastu. We're gonna meet the masterminds.
So, we could finish up this chapter today,
Let's do it.
but let's give a super quick overview.
Let's what do you call it? Let's finish it if it's ready to be finished. Let's not rush
All
it.
right.
Let's enjoy the journey.
No, well, I said we could, right? I didn't say we would.
Okay, good.
Okay, so the chapter is called Ideal Family Life. Narada's been instructing Yudhishthira, about these kind of social not standards, but like the way to live, like the way that we should live according to these sacred texts. And how the married person, the householder should be living, it began, just like a lot of the qualities, it talked about detachment and it talked about simplicity, frugality, all these things are there. It talked about how the householder may be in the association of people that aren't so spiritual and that they don't have to put on a show. As a matter of fact, it might even be helpful for them to kind of appear like they're just as materialistic as everyone else externally, but internally they got a whole thing going on. And then it began to talk a lot about, because you're in that circumstance, it's the time of life where you have some wealth. How are you going to engage that wealth? How are you going to avoid the pitfalls that wealth can pull you towards? And so then, it was speaking of how that wealth should be engaged in maintaining others, and in what they would call acts of yagna or acts of sacrifice, meaning you engage that in ceremonies that will uplift the people, that will uplift everyone's consciousness, uplift your own as well as others. And a lot of that had to do with feeding people. We're honoring people and respecting people, caring for people, providing for people by feeding for them. And then there was like a section where it described all like the auspicious times to do that and all the auspicious places to do that. And now we're getting to the point where, like, well, who is the focus of these ceremonies? Who is the focus of these meditations? Because the ceremonies are just meant to bring the mind to a central focus. And then he said that really interesting verse we hit a couple of days ago where he said that Krishna is the root of all. Like if all of us are like branches on a tree, Krishna is the root of that tree. And so when the focus, the offering, you could say the worship, and I think we can talk a little bit about this word worship today, but when it's all goes towards the root, then everyone benefits. And he was providing this as like a kind of a formula for just like universal harmony and universal evolution, that we can all uplift ourselves. And so now he's going to describe more about that person, that Krishna, and Krishna in the heart of every living being, that all of this, whatever ritual, whatever austerities, whatever frugality, whatever maintenance, all of these household duties are all meant to help us understand and realize and feel God in the heart, God in our own heart, and God in the heart of every living being, just like Clarence Clemons is feeling.
Okay, right. This is text 38. O King Yudhisthira, the super soul in everybody gives intelligence to the individual soul according to his capacity for understanding. Therefore, the super soul is the chief within the body. Chief. The super soul is manifested to the individual soul according to the individual's comparative development of knowledge, austerity, penance, and so on.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So in the previous verse, it mentioned that it said that that Krishna, he's created many residential places like bodies of human beings, animals, birds, saints, demigods. You name it. If it's a living being, he's present in there, as that Paramatma. And so, we're going to hear more about that, understanding that, feeling that this is the chief soul within the body, because it's the one that's the real maintainer,
My dear King, when
And I was just gonna say, and it mentions that the super soul is manifest to who? Who's coming in contact with it? Who's feeling it? Clarence Clemons said you had to have a calm mind, right? Then you feel something inside. And here it says the super soul is manifest to the individual soul according to the individual's comparative development of knowledge. And, that's not just trivial knowledge, but knowledge of who I am, who
right,
God is, what this world is, what's matter, what's spirit, being able to discern. So the individual's comparative development in knowledge, austerity, penance, and so on. So again, that means I'm beginning to understand what this world is and who I am, that I'm not this body, I'm not this mind. The things of this world are temporary. True happiness doesn't come. I'm starting to let go. I can perform some penance, some austerity, let go of these things. And as I'm starting to let go, I'm starting to come more in touch with that voice inside.
it's pretty amazing, huh? We're just like, like programmed puppets running on sensual desires, like making poor choices and getting dragged
Oh,
around. Woo.
and becoming proud of it,
And becoming
admiring
arrogant
it.
and then thinking that's what I'm doing it. It's not you're
That's what
doing
it's
it.
all
Our
about.
uncontrolled senses are doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if we have some good luck or some good fortune, then we get arrogant about it. And yeah, so knowledge, imbibing knowledge is a lot what we do on our podcast. We want to figure out ways for people can study more, and we want to make the show available for everybody. Figure out courses, figure out groups where we talk about knowledge. We have special things where we talk about austerity, and we perform some special penance. Sometimes we do that during Kartik. We'll say, okay, we're going to make a commitment to do this, and our community follows that lead. And this is the way that we imbibe knowledge, and then hopefully some of that sticks to the ribs, and it becomes part of our new being. Where I'm not gonna act on those impulses again. They never served me. And sometimes people click in right away and like this makes so much sense. And sometimes it's like a waterfall on a rock. It takes maybe 1,000 years to smooth that jagged rock, and then eventually it becomes smooth. But it might take lifetimes to do it, right? And sometimes
Yeah.
different things goes quicker than other. Like, I make that vegetarianism, that makes a lot of sense. I'm not just going to go on an impulse. I do like the taste of meat, but I'm not going to eat it. Sometimes we can act and something really clicks in. And then some things are just harder habits to break. They've been almost like we've been running these bad habits for lifetimes. But we're showing up every day and just imbibing this stuff.
It's like you and I have been practicing this for decades now. And sometimes it's scary to think, what if I did know all of this? You know, but also we also have to think of where am I now and what am I not? Those beings that are so much further progressed than I am, like they must look back at where I'm at right now and say, "Oh God, it'd be horrible to be right there right now."
Look where Raghunath is. What a mess. Oh, this is so sad.
Yeah, so we got to
Somebody
keep
help this
moving.
man.
We got to keep moving
It's
forward.
true. It's true.
Yeah, and the Bhagavatam's always taking us to that deeper understanding, because a lot of the sacred texts would be really going on about how we can enjoy this world. Bhagavatam's always this response to the earlier texts, like the texts that get into the karma kunda, the division of the texts that talk about material prosperity through piety and sacrifice. And here it's saying that if all you get is, okay, let me be a dutiful, pious person, and through that I'll enjoy the world, then you haven't gone deep. And so what Narada is sharing here is that all of those kind of instructions are meant to connect you to the supreme being, the root of it all. And when you get there, you should be connecting with every living being. You should see God in the heart of every living being. You should feel it. And so there should be natural respect and love that you feel for everyone. And that's where spirituality goes.
Mm.
And if you don't get that, you're missing the point. And that's how this chapter it's going to kind of make that more clear as we
Yeah. Let me ask you a
wrap it
question.
up.
Let me ask you a question. Is it the Abrahamic traditions that just don't get that, or is it just very narrow narrow, short-sighted, myopic, fundamentalist Abrahamic traditions that don't get this. It seems like everybody's worshiping God or Jesus or Allah or but they have this like thing where if you don't worship how I worship, you are cut off from God.
You're cut
You are
off.
not only cut off, you're going the opposite direction. You're taking the express train downtown. So my question is, there are people who worship God. Why aren't they getting this realization and appreciating other people on a spiritual practice? Is it either woven into their teachings or are they just worshiping in a wrong way? Because they do worship God. Some people will kill people in the name of God. They're missing something.
Well, I don't think it's everyone in the Vedic tradition is getting it, and in the other traditions they're not getting it. I
Yeah.
think that that there's a progression. It's a natural evolution. It's a natural. When I say natural progression, I mean it's something that's widely observed. It's ubiquitous. This progression from karma to jnana to bhakti.
Hmm.
And so, the progression from seeing this world as my place to enjoy, and then the response to that or the reaction to that is, no, it's a place to renounce.
Hmm.
And then the synthesis, bhakti is both world embracing and world renouncing, by focus on the supreme, through devotion. But you'll find that, like for instance, when we talk about Buddhism, when Western people talk about Buddhism, generally we think of it as a very jnanic path. It's a path of recognizing the world as a place of suffering, letting go of all the attachments, and achieving the freedom. That's a very jnanic idea. But I was reading this book on Buddhism where it was written by some professor who visited Nepal and was really studying it in depth. And he said, when you get into the places where people really live this, it's more of a karmic path. It has a lot to do with finding the priest, the lama that's going to do the rituals, that's going to help you counteract bad karma. That's a very karmic idea, right? And then in Buddhism, I also understand that there's a more, of course, it's not as pronounced as we find in the Bhakti tradition, but there's an idea of devotion. There's an idea of love being the higher goal. And we'll find that in Christianity, we'll find that in Judaism, we'll find that, it's all over the place. But where we find it most clearly articulated, I would believe, I don't think there's any debate. Where you'll find this idea most clearly articulated is in Srimad Bhagavatam. Where it's most clearly saying, look, it's like 3 stages on a ladder. It's like, and it is like that dialectic kind of idea where there's a thesis. Let's enjoy the material world by being pious. That'll make us happy. And then there's the antithesis. Are you kidding me? Material happiness is always followed by suffering. Renounce the things of this world. And then there's a synthesis. When I see it all as God's energy, I can embrace it, I can renounce it. I can embrace it externally, renounce it internally. But it's all, I see it all in connection, and I see myself in connection. I see everyone in connection with that root, So it's there in the Abrahamic traditions, but it may not be as clearly articulated always. But, there's always those mystics that are getting into it, right?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. My dear king, when great sages and saintly persons saw mutually disrespectful dealings at the beginning of Treta Yuga, deity worship in the temple was introduced with all the paraphernalia. So it seems like deity worship was meant to plug a hole in disrespectful dealing. People who were disrespectful,
if you're
disrespectful.
We got into that I think it was a couple days ago maybe, where we were discussing the 4 different ages and how each one has a different yuga dharma.
Yeah.
And so in such a yuga, it's just meditation. It's just I'm going to sit and meditate deeply. I'm going to go within. I'm going to enter into a state of samadhi, and I'll feel God in my heart. And once I feel that, I understand everything. I understand how I relate to you. I understand that what's going on inside here is going on inside you too, and that we're all equal on a spiritual level. But if I am no longer able to, as the age changes and the external atmosphere begins to shift, and now people aren't so capable of that, and then there's the age where big sacrifices are being done, but as we become less capable of performing those as well, then it's saying, okay, then in order to come in, if you can't come into contact with God in your own heart through going into a state of samadhi, a very elusive state of consciousness, then create a temple, right, which is kind of like an external manifestation of the heart. And in the center of it, on the altar, you place God, right? And through ritual, you call God to take that form. And now you can engage in a sadhana. Now you can engage in a practice where you're beginning to see God here in this temple, right? As a kind of like a springboard to finding God in the heart. If I can't do it through samadhi, then I'll do it through temple worship and then feel it in my heart and see it in the heart of every living being. But just as you're saying, the common like default when we're beginners at this is that we're not gonna see the depth of it. We're gonna take it on the external level, and we're gonna feel like just what you said. God is in my temple, but not in yours. Right. No, God is in everyone's temple because God's in everyone's body, But so the temple worship is meant to help us feel God and see God in everyone, and therefore relate to everyone, respect everyone, love everyone. And if we don't connect with it in that way, then the whole thing is kind of it has no life. And I think the next verse is going to get into that in more detail.
Text 39. My dear king, when great sages and saintly persons, text 40. Sometimes a neophyte devotee offers all the paraphernalia for worshiping the Lord, and he factually worships the Lord as the deity. But because he is envious of authorized devotees of Lord Vishnu, the Lord is never satisfied with his devotional service.
Oh, ouch, right?
So sometimes you can see, okay, this is God in the temple, but the guy next to me, I don't like this person.
Yeah.
This is where we're working towards, that we're supposed to see God in every living being, not just seeing God in the temple, or else we miss the point. This is where Bangladesh is going right through. They're getting like all these
Krishna.
neophyte Islamic
Religion.
the terrorists have taken control.
Yeah, this
power.
isn't like Rumi, like who's got like
these
deep
are like just
spiritual understanding.
fundamentalists, and now they have some power and they have weapons, and they're creating.
Our God is good, and yours is.
Your God isn't the real God, so we're gonna not only just burn down your temples, we're gonna burn down your villages, we're gonna rape your women. It's like total serious genocide over the same worship.
Yeah. Yeah, they missed the point.
They missed the point.
It's as we're talking about this evolution, from the Vedas, the Vedic texts, these ancient texts, right? They deal a lot with the ritual, and the common ritual is the fire ritual, right? Where we see it as like you take some bricks and you make this fire pit, and you light the fire with mantras, you're making offerings into that fire, and everybody has it, anyone from that culture kind of has it impressed in their mind, the sacredness of this, and the idea that we take what we have and we make an offering of it to God, and that brings auspiciousness. But as Vyasadev's literatures kind of grow and kind of develop, they'll take that, like the Bhagavad Gita will take that fire ritual and use it as a metaphor, saying like your entire life can be this sacrifice, right? And just as you recognize all the ingredients in the sacrifice as being sacred and holy and spiritualized because of the way they're being engaged, your entire life can become spiritualized when you make your life a sacrifice, when you make your life an offering. And that's, that's why it's being brought up here. Now, if we go back to the third canto, there's this verse that totally relates to this. I think you'll like this one, Raghunath. You ready? There's Bhagavatam, third canto, 29th chapter, text 22. One who worships the deity of Godhead in the temples, but does not know that the Supreme Lord as Paramatma is situated in every living entity's heart, must be in ignorance, and is compared to, do you know what they're compared to?
No.
They're compared to one who offers oblations into ashes.
Huh.
So like, if you have that fire pit, but there's no fire in it, and you're pouring ghee into it, you're just wasting your ghee. It's like, your offering's not being accepted. There's no connection.
Don't waste your ghee, Mara. Write that down.
Never waste ghee.
Waste your ghee.
Now, this is what Prabhupada writes in the commentary to that verse, 3:29-22. He says, it is clearly stated herein that the Supreme Personality Godhead, in his plenary expansion as Supersoul, is present in all living entities. The living entities have, Mara, how many different kinds of bodies? Hot seat.
The living entities have how many different kinds?
How many species of living entities are there according to the Vedas?
8.4 million?
Say again?
8.4 million?
Yeah, 8,400,000. Yeah.
Pretty good.
We're going to say 0.4. Yeah, no, that's it. Very good. So the living entities have 8,400,000 different kinds of bodies. And the Supreme Personality Godhead is living in every body, both as the individual soul and as a super soul. Since the individual soul is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and in that sense, the Lord is living in every body, and as super soul, the Lord is also present as a witness. In both cases, the presence of God in every living entity is essential, right? When Prabhupada used that word essential, like that's the essence, right? That's what's meaningful. The body is something that's coming and going and changing and shifting, but the essence is that the soul and the super soul are there. Therefore, persons who profess to belong to some religious sect, but who do not feel the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in every living entity,
This is it.
and everywhere else,
What about them?
they're in the mode of ignorance.
It's mode of ignorance.
If without this preliminary knowledge of the Lord's omnipresence, one simply attaches himself to the rituals in a temple, church, or mosque, it is as if he were offering butter or ghee into ashes rather than into the fire. One offers sacrifices by pouring clarified butter into a fire and chanting Vedic mantras. But even if there are Vedic mantras and all conditions are favorable, if the clarified butter is poured on ashes, then the sacrifice will be useless. In other words, a devotee should not ignore any living entity. The devotee ignore. Interesting, the proper use that we would think ignore means like, oh, I'm not listening to them or something like that. But I think he's saying it has, I think he's tying that together with the word ignorance. Like not recognize the life, not recognize the sacredness in any living entity. In other words, a devotee should not ignore any living entity. The devotee must know that in every living entity, however insignificant he may be, even in an ant, God is present, and therefore every living entity should be kindly treated and should not be subjected to any violence. And then Prabhupada, this is Prabhupada's kind of, you could say almost like pet project or pet peeve, or, like this is where he'll commonly go at this point. In modern civilized society, slaughterhouses are regularly maintained. These factory farms are just kind of like Prabhupada is pointing to them. And he's saying this is like the real festering sore in society is, that we're committing systematic, heavy-duty cruelty and not recognizing it as such. So he says slaughterhouses are regularly maintained and supported by a certain type of religious principle, but without knowledge of the presence of God in every living entity any so-called advancement of human civilization, either spiritual or material, is understood to be in the mode of ignorance.
Isn't it amazing how they think of like, well, they don't have souls. They're animals.
No, I
It's like
felt the same. I had no
basic.
understanding of it either myself when I was at a certain point in my life, you know.
So we have homework for this today. Homework is like next time you see someone today or see somebody on the news that's driving you a little bit crazy, or in my case, there is a gigantic, I don't even know what it is,
That's a good
bug.
way.
It looks like do you know what I'm talking about? There's a bug been in the kitchen now for 2 days. It's just giant mosquito. It looks like the size of my hand.
I don't think it's a mosquito because it's so big.
No, it's not a mosquito eater, too. Ever see those? Those are pretty big. They look like mosquitoes, but they're bigger. This is like bigger than both of them. And I don't know how to get it without killing it, but I'm going to just say, you know what, you beautiful thing? I'm going to try to figure out how to release this with
God is in
love.
you.
Instinctually, I want to whack it with a shoe. That's the
No,
old,
Rogan, no.
that's how I grew up. A bug, whack with shoe. And so there's a principle we're trying to practice here, that there is a soul and there is a super soul within that disgusting bug on my wall. I have to learn how to see.
It seems
See the
peaceful.
soul.
It is
Doesn't
peaceful.
Like flying around.
Well, it's a type of prejudice. It's a type of a prejudice we have against things that we don't think are attractive. It's like racism towards bugs. I don't like your body, so I hate you. Come on, Raghu.
Come on.
We can be better. We can do better, Raghu. Don't whack bugs with your shoe.
Actually, to that text 39,
Yeah.
this is from the Bhakti Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami's Bhakti Sandarbha, talking about that shift from the meditational age to the deity worship age. He says, seeing that people thought of themselves while disrespecting others, the wise created the deity form of worship. This was revealed in order to show the method of serving the Lord, right? If I can't do it all through internal meditation, then we need to create an external thing, right? If people's attention can't go within sufficiently, then we need we need God in an external manifestation. From this, it is understood that the deity form is superior to humans as an object of worship, since it is effective for people who have the fault of disrespect for humans. Think about that. If your temple worship makes you disrespect other humans, you miss the entire point.
Yeah.
The whole thing is driven so that you will respect every living being, and see God in them.
We can't walk around with harboring resentment, harboring anger. We're just not liking a person. We're asked to be very understanding.
Oh,
Do you understand?
I don't know if I do, Raghunath.
I can
Speak
help
to me
you.
more.
I can help you. Guess what? It's time. It's
Okay, we'll
time. I know
finish
we only
the
have 2
chapter
verses.
tomorrow.
Maybe we'll finish it tomorrow.
Okay.
Enjoy the journey.
It's all about the journey.
It's about the journey.
Ready for some takeaways?
There is
How
no
about it's all about the takeaways.
take it away.
The calm mind allows us to connect within and with higher beings.
Mara and
Mhm.
Raghu.
Find
And Clarence
stillness.
Clemons.
Find stillness for creativity downloads and deeper inspiration.
Say that again. Find
Stillness for creativity downloads.
creativity downloads.
Don't live in the anxiety of the mind and miss out on spirit.
Mhm.
Yep.
Imbibe and apply knowledge.
Yeah.
Imbibe it, apply it.
Imbibe it, apply it.
See the Lord in the temple to see God in all temples and all beings.
That's right, the temple of the heart.
Mm.
God's presence is the essence.
Oh, nice.
Give me presence.
Clean mind, see divine.
Ooh, now we're
Nice.
talking.
That one's
Okay.
taken under Chandra.
That's a good one.
It was a good one. I thought you guys would like it. And
And
don't waste your ghee.
Don't waste your key, people. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to everybody that supports our platform and supports this podcast. And I hope people are getting something out of this podcast.
hey, when are you going to do a Sweet Baby Krishna again?
I don't know. Not sure.
Come on.
My kid's going away this week. I've got just a lot of stuff going on.
All right.
but I wanted to thank everybody that supported the podcast. If you want to support what we're doing, go to wisdomofthesages.com. You can make a contribution, become a supporting member. We really appreciate it. It helps us continue to float this boat that we're on. All community supported everything. Also, we have a Wisdom of the Sages retreat at the farm. The Wisdom of the Sages retreat is happening on Columbus Day weekend. Or come to Super Soul Farm, upstate New York, 2.5 hours north of New York City, 2 hours west of Boston. 2.5 hours west of Boston. Ideally located, we have Chant Camp coming up on Labor Day weekend. And then a retreat with me and Nikki Haas doing a yoga retreat in September. That's all on raghunath.yoga. Go to the events page, and you can register for all those retreats, including the Wisdom of the Sages one. Going to India for pilgrimage also. Check that out. That's on the wisdomofthesages.com. Holy places, holy people, high vibe, life changer. Looking forward to it.
Game changer?
Game changer. Desi Krishna Bolo Jai. Also, Kirtan Academy, Mridanga Academy is happening this year, January, in the Govardhan Eco Village. You've been there, you love it. You know that.
Oh, hey, I put up my description for the course that I'm going to be teaching in January.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I put up on Instagram, and now it's there. Maybe we should put it under.
I shared it.
Oh,
It's on my
you.
Instagram now.
Thank you. But I think we'll put an announcement on the website, and you can find it already if you search for that event in the website. It describes the course. I'm excited about the course.
Yeah, me too.